Welcome to the show. We hope you have a blast. Thanks for making time for the Dealer Talk podcast. Another business leader, here's a penny for your thoughts. This ain't a regular conversation, baby. This that Dealer Talk. Yeah, this that Dealer Talk.
What up? Welcome back to another episode of the Dealer Talk podcast, season 7, episode 4. So we're 4 episodes into the season. Stoked today. We're going to be talking to none other, than Mr. Ben Gay. So really excited to have some of his concepts and wisdoms available to all of you amazing folks who are tuning in and listening. What's going on, Charidion?
What is up? Happy podcast day.
Yeah.
It's my favorite day of the week.
All right. So
all the enthusiasm. Last week, you were knocking me for my enthusiasm. Or lack thereof.
I have a lot of enthusiasm. What do you mean? Do I not seem enthusiastic?
Nope.
No?
Mm-mm.
Oh, that's not good. I'm enthusiastic. Yay. All right. So I'm super excited for today's session. I've been wanting to talk to our guest for a minute. So it should be fun.
Yes.
We are going to talk about some industry stuff, and then we'll get right into it. So Charity, kick us off.
Automotive news. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Automotive news. Today, I would like to take a moment to, on a lighter subject, tell you that if you were looking to buy a Bugatti, they are sold out well into 2025. So you're going to have to wait on that one, just so you know.
Right on.
Let's talk about the FTC. So at work the other day, my PR director comes in and she says, I need you to write a letter to the FTC. And I didn't have a clue. Like I wasn't obviously paying enough attention. And now I completely feel personal responsibility for not paying attention. But what the hell? That's what I have to say. You don't. Okay. So it's possible that I read the proposal. Or most of it. I read. See, this is the proposal. This is part of it. This isn't the whole thing. I went to print it, Herb, and then I realized that I didn't check the amount of pages it was before I started printing. It's like 100 pages long.
Too late now. Like killing trees, huh?
That's me. Priuses exist for a reason. Okay, so first of all, I've said this before, that statistics are one of those things that if you word them just right, they make you look really good and they make the other person look really bad. An example of this would be, did you know that teen pregnancy rates include married 19-year-olds? Or did you know that when a college says that their employment rate after graduation is, insert whatever it is, 60, 70%, they include all employment, including if you work at McDonald's. All employment.
Well, you got to start somewhere, man.
Right.
I mean.
So one of the things that this FTC ruling says is that motor vehicle financing is the third largest source of debt for consumers under the age of 50 in the United States at $1.46 trillion. Do you know what the second is?
No clue.
Do you know what the first is?
No.
Okay. First is mortgages, which is a given.
Yeah.
Second, student loan debt.
Oh, yeah. I'm not surprised by that at all. No.
So this entire thing is literally like it's a witch hunt against dealerships. Obviously, I would like to make a caveat to the rest of this automotive news by saying that this is not that I'm going to be very strongly opinionated about this. This is a witch hunt. And if we're really going to say that the automotive industry, and we're going to crucify the automotive industry, and we're going to make the entire group responsible for this stuff, we're just going to glaze over student loan debt like it's nothing. You guys are so bad with all of your automotive debt, but the government with all of their student loan debt is like nothing. Anyway, 1.6 trillion, by the way.
What's interesting to me about that is the fact that all three of those are kind of intertwine. You know what I mean? So you need you need education you don't need an education to get a job, but it sure does open up some doors, and it gives you but it gives you a head start in some way, shape, or form. And in order to purchase these things, you need the income. So it's interesting how they interrelate, and yet it's the automotive portion that gets.
So this is the other one, the factors for overcoming poverty: assets, a house, an education, and a car. And those are the three main assets, or the three main factors to overcoming poverty. So just saying. All right. So then the verbiage kills me. All right. It says, for purchases at new car dealerships, the average new vehicle now sells for more than $42,000. So whenever we're really specific like that, more than $42,000, the next question is, how much more than $42,000? $42,379. So it makes it sound like it's really, really a lot more, but it's really not. So whenever you're reading this kind of stuff, that's the kind of verbiage that you're looking for. But the main focus, and this goes back to what we've talked about. So some of the themes that we've been talking about are, how do we enhance and speed up the process for a person buying a car, right? We've talked about that, you and I, frequently. Mm-hmm. We've also talked about, are the markups causing customer dissatisfaction? And then we've also talked about how much the past 2 years have shifted how the automotive industry is perceived, right? This document is the tax we're about to pay for those three things. Like market adjustments and markups, that they're coming straight at these. And they say that the amount of time that it takes for a consumer to buy a vehicle directly correlates with them signing contracts that they wouldn't otherwise sign. They call it buyer fatigue.
Well, I mean, okay.
I know.
So let's talk about that one for a second, because that's one of I've explored that topic on the podcast several times, and I really feel like that is one of the major issues that is hindering the automotive space. Like, we have to get away from some of these old practices, right? Like right now, the process should be streamlined, one person, front to back. You know what I mean? Soup to nuts. Like, one person does it all. Like, it's your salesperson, your closer, and your finance person. Like, that really should be the evolution. I think it makes it quicker for the customer. It makes a better experience, because there's no handoff. There's no, how awkward it is after you've built rapport to a customer to get somebody else in the deal and they have to build rapport. Like, that's just weird.
Oh yeah.
It's so weird. Why do we keep doing
from
that?
A business development phase, like we build this rapport on the phone with a customer, and then they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to meet you. And I'm like, well, so you're not going to meet me.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just that whole thing. It needs to be more
Right.
I was going
And
to say
there
mortgage
are,
brokers, but
in
like,
this document, there are a lot of spots where anybody who's reading this that's in the automotive industry would go, I can see that one.
right. And that's my point. Like, it needs to be more like a realtor, they say realtor or realtor
Right.
experience. One person
But
does the whole thing for
this
you.
is brutal. It says that the proposed new rule would require record keeping for a period of 24 months of all material different, this is a quote, all material different advertisements, sales scripts, training materials, and marketing materials regarding a vehicle price, financing, or leasing terms. So all of the advertising has to be kept for 2 years.
Yeah.
So wait. So then it goes into the price of all of this. And this is what blew my mind. The commission estimates, again, this is a quote, estimates the associated labor costs for these disclosures by applying appropriate hourly labor cost rates. For compiling and reviewing a master add-on list, the associated annual labor cost burden for the industry, 28,105,752. 81% of dealers with an online presence will require 8 hours of programming. Associated costs will be another 8.7 million. Initial and ongoing costs to provide disclosures relating to cash price without optional add-ons, 32.6 million annually.
Wow. That's insane, man.
That's what the cost of this. That's just 3 of them. That doesn't even it just keeps going.
But see, again, if we had better processes and better experiences, then we wouldn't leave room for shit like this.
Mm-mm.
You know what I mean? And that's
I know.
that's my
I
problem.
don't disagree at all.
Like, one thing I talk with my dealers all the time, it's like, dude, why can I buy a car so easily via text and not everybody else?
Right.
Like, I know you can do it.
And
like, I know you guys can do it. You do it with me. Like, why not make it easier for the customer? Like, we put all these barriers and we make it more difficult than it has to be. And so then, of course, we get stupid stuff like this. And because there's room to pick it apart in this manner, we're exposed.
Well, and then there was another spot, which of course I lost and can't find again. But they pretty much absolve all financial institutions of any responsibility. Like, they lay this flat on the dealerships. And yeah, the verbiage, we're talking like really emotional verbiage. There's a lot of like negative sentiment toward the automotive industry. It's just, and it says one of the things that they're proposing is that you can't discriminate against customers because they're paying cash. You can't change the price, and you have to disclose the price completely, except for taxing and government fees. Everything has to be disclosed.
Well, one more thing that we'll have to circumvent. But again, that's the other thing about dealers are super resilient, and we always find a way to figure it out, work around it.
It makes me think of all week as I've been reading this thing, the thing that keeps going through my head is Ross on the stairs with the couch in Friends yelling, "Pivot!"
Yeah. That's hilarious. Hey, make sure, Luis, if you can put that in here without us being legally in trouble, that would be amazing.
That's where we're at in the automotive industry. Pivot!
Right on.
I would also like to know which sales guy sold the car to the head of the FTC that pissed him off this much.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, dude. Or how do you say it? Or do duet? Because you never know.
Or do debt.
You do debt, yeah.
Nah. Girls don't make mistakes like that.
Ooh. Ooh. See, that's how messed up it is. I can't say anything because if I do, then I'll get in trouble. Yep, you're right.
You know, you can say stuff back to me. I'm fine.
Okay. So anything else? Or are we going to the blog?
We can go into the blog.
Right.
But
This is a good one. There's a lot of information here, and it's definitely something that we need to pay attention to. And most importantly, like we need to learn from these things, man. Enough. Like let's not make it so easy for us to have these kinds of issues and be this exposed.
Don't we walked ourselves into this one. But also it's open for public comment until the 12th of September. After that, full stop. Nobody gets to say anything about it after that. So
right on.
Strongly suggest you go have an opinion over at the FTC.
Make sure you link it in the show notes and in the video description on our YouTube page. Let's make sure that folks have access to it and they can check it out for themselves. So. All right, moving on. Blog post.
So, blog post of the week is inventory and marketing toward customers based on the new demands of a customer. In the blog post, we specifically talk about, pre-purchasing and putting vehicles. See, we don't call them on-order vehicles because you're not actually ordering a vehicle. You're just buying it before it gets.
It's a purchase, yeah.
So we call it pre-purchasing, but.
So let me expand a little bit here. So there's two things, right? There's the new car side of the industry, which is obviously been impacted with everything going on. And that has obviously caused issues on the new car side, some positive and some negative. But on the new car side, if you guys if it's anything like the meetings that I'm having, nobody knows anything. Nobody's willing to give any dates. Nobody's willing to share any information. Now there's more pressure because of the financial state of things. And so,
and all of the FTC rules that are about to come down on us.
Right. And so we have to start looking, if we're not already, we need to pivot and talk about or come up with strategies for the new car side that are a little bit different. Things like car finder pages should be something that is prevalent on all websites right now. Vehicle ordering processes, landing pages, things like that, where we're pulling customers in to those experiences if your manufacturer allows it. Like, some manufacturers you can. It's an order, and so that makes things a little bit more difficult. But you could do things like wait a little, save a lot, right? So if you're willing to wait for your car, then maybe some stores can, you could even remove any market adjustments, right? Because that builds sales for you, which builds allocation, and there's positive impacts for the dealership on that side of things. But then all the pressure that the new car is putting on the used car sector, which has been very beneficial for us in the past couple of years because of demand and supply, and that raises price, which everybody's benefited from as well. But, the market's adjusting and the market's normalizing to a certain degree, and the used car prices are adjusting, and the customers themselves are willing to wait. And so that demand, I see a lot of digital demand, so to speak, digital activity, but less in-store traffic. So
I see a lot of customers calling from out of my area. Hey, do you have this vehicle? And my first question is, do you live here locally? Oh no, I live in Florida. How many dealerships have you been looking at? It's just always 5, 6, 7 dealerships.
Right. And then this has created kind of an interesting phenomena in certain markets, in particular metro markets, where you have these groups that usually kind of stay in their lane because they put a lot of emphasis on their new car, which generates used car activity. But now they've have to revert that and be super focused on used cars. And then you see a lot of cannibalization because, for the most part, you're kind of competing at a more inventory specific level. And so I predict, and I'm already starting to see a lot of this, that these groups are going to have to move into more of a single used car strategy, where it makes it cleaner. There's less cannibalization. You're not kind of competing each other on the spend side of things. It's a lot easier to attribute. But I'm not saying, I just want to be clear that I'm not saying that it's going to change your internal processes. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying from a marketing standpoint, it makes a lot of sense to have a singular used car strategy versus having, each individual store within your group kind of have their own sort of deal in the same market or in the same areas. It makes it a lot easier for you guys to focus on one strategy, drive everything, streamline everything in that direction, and still have your captive brand, like your used, whatever your brand is, be specific to that store, but at the same time, try to capitalize on the SEM and the SEO and social at a group level, at a singular level. The other thing that's super advantageous. I'm sorry. The other thing that's super advantageous about doing that too, from an SEO standpoint, is that it really allows you to hone in on the local component, because it's very hard for a dealer to compete with Auto Traders, Edmunds, Carfaxes. Like, it's very hard to outrank them on an SEO VIN specific type of content, but you can local stuff that's, whether it is community based or, imagine having like a Sunday Drive article, and then in that article you put like, this would be a perfect, trail to do with this, blah, 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 blah. And then it's a way for you to kind of incorporate the sales aspect into it, but you're talking more about things that are local. And I feel like you would have a lot more chances to win with that strategy versus going on, creating a page for like a specific vehicle and talk about their features and stuff, because you're just going to get outranked. Anyway, what you had a thought?
I was going to say also, you avoid the cannibalization aspects of a group level when you go to a singular.
What do you mean?
Well, like with my group. Say that again.
The competition?
Yeah, the competition.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just outspend the guy next door, and you're like, "Whoa, you guys are selling the same cars!" Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, it's not so much about that, because competition is good, but it's about doing it efficiently and effectively at the minimum, at the lowest cost possible, but still having more chances to win. And, it just, how does CarMax succeed in the markets that they're in, right? Like there's multiple of them in a certain area. And yet they still have their opportunities to win. And I think that's something that we, like we talked about with Paul and Kyle, we have to look at some of these companies and the successes that they've had and see the things that are working for them. But if you can combine everything into one branding message and one strategy, one feel, it's better. Imagine, just keep it easy. Imagine having 10 stores under one group, and each store has a different way of doing things and a different way of marketing themselves in a different way, the different brand message. It's just, it's very difficult. Yeah, for sure. So
that goes back to that cooperative and competitive. There's some aspects of this business that just have to be competitive. Like, that's just the nature of the business. But then we make everything competitive when at some point you have to stop and go, okay, this isn't doing anybody any good. We have to start thinking about it from a different perspective.
Absolutely.
Cooperative perspective.
Yep. And so we're gonna, as always, we're gonna link the article in the show notes. So make sure to check it out there. You can read more about it. Then of course, we encourage you to submit your questions. You can go to our website, dealertalk.io, go to podcasts, submit your questions, and then you can submit your questions there as well. Okay, awesome. Without further ado, we have our guest ready to join us here at the Dealer Talk podcast, Mr. Ben Gay. What's going on, sir? How are you?
Hello.
Had a little audio glitch. Are we good now?
There you go.
We're good.
Well, I said hello, and I'm happy to be here.
Hi.
Awesome. It's good to have you, sir. I've been wanting to talk to you for a minute, so thank you so much for joining us. We kick things off here with an intro. So tell us about you.
Well, I'm a salesman. I've been a salesman since I was about 10, and I just turned 80. So I've got a little bit of experience. Won my first sales contest at 10, selling Krispy Kreme donuts to help put the gold dome on the Georgia State Capitol, and started my own business at 14. Mowing lawns, but I wasn't mowing. I was selling, inspecting, and collecting, employing about 20, 25 of my friends in the growing season. And I've been selling something, had some little hustle going. I don't remember when I wasn't. The neighbors used to laugh. They hated to see me coming with my little red wagon because I was selling Christmas cards or saltwater taffy or Krispy Kreme donuts or whatever. Then I went to work for Macy's briefly. Davison's in Atlanta, became their youngest buyer. Quickly figured out there was no money in working for Macy's. So got back into selling, became a manufacturer's rep, then went to work for my father. And Wednesday, September 15th, 1965, I answered a little one ad in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Said, if you know anything about marketing plans, want to make more money, dial this number. Well, I didn't know what a marketing plan was, but I was making not a whole lot of money yet and putting my wife through nursing school. So making money was of great appeal. So I stepped into a phone booth, dialed, and I literally mean dialed. Your younger listeners, well, they probably don't know what a phone booth is, but if
Yeah, they probably don't.
yeah. But it turned out I dialed in the launch code because about 15 minutes later, I was standing in front of the desk of the guy who had run the ad. I tried to question him to see if he was worthy of hiring me, and he said,
I love that.
He said, Mr. Gay, I'm not the man standing in a phone booth answering want ads. So where are you? And I told him. He said, oh, you're just a couple blocks from my office. Be standing in front of my desk in 10 or 15 minutes, or don't ever dial this number again, and hung up. So I said to my running buddy, who turned out to be the greatest salesman I ever personally worked with, but we didn't know that yet, Jimmy Rucker, he came around. We both worked for my father in the food brokerage business. And I said, quick, 1447 West Peachtree Street. And he said, what's going on? I said, we're going to be rich. I just had a feeling anybody would run an ad in the newspaper, get a response, and hang up on you. Probably had something going for him. So we went skidding in front of the receptionist desk. I said, hi, I'm Ben Gay. And they said, your appointment is set, sir. Mr. Dempsey will be with you in a few minutes. And behind me, I heard this Southern accent say, Ben Gay. And I turned around. I'm used to Ben Gay jokes. So I turned around and I said, yeah, I'm Ben Gay. What's your name? And he said, Zig Ziglar.
Oh,
Zig had answered the same ad I'd answered. He was
What?
18. Yeah, he was 18 years
That's
older,
amazing.
but he had
That's
not yet
so cool.
he hadn't had a big hit. He was selling cookware in Columbia, South Carolina. Saw the same ad, if you know anything about
Wow.
marketing plans, and we both went in together. So on that day, the rocket ride began. 2 years later, I was president of the company. Having beaten Zig in a year-long national sales contest, was probably a millionaire by then. It doesn't mean much anymore, but then being a millionaire was a big deal, and was traveling all over the world, hobnobbing with some of the greatest people, Dr. Napoleon Hill,
Wow.
Zig, Ogmandino, Earl Nightingale came to work for me. As the voice of holiday magic. So we say in the South, even a blind pig finds an acorn occasionally. And September 15th, Ben Gay found the acorn.
That's amazing, man. What a journey. Wow. I can't even, so much there to unpack. So what in your career, right? Like all this time doing it, what would you say is the main thing that is required for success in sales?
Personal discipline, talent,
Mm.
and so and so, but all that doesn't make any difference unless you apply it. So
Oh, yeah.
personal discipline would be right near the top of any list. In fact, if it's not on the list, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting. Charity and I did a session that I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day, but if it does, we were talking about the difference between the two. I think a lot of people get those two mixed up, or they get motivation and discipline kind of mixed up a little bit, right? Because discipline, and to me, discipline is doing it when you don't even want to. You just get up and you get it done. And by doing that, that eventually motivates you. And a lot of people are waiting to get that motivation in order to do something. And that's kind of like backwards thinking, right? Like it's not, I personally, I'm always going to choose not to do that thing initially until I force myself to do it enough where I actually can't function without doing it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. Got to start with some action. I'm writing a new explanation for the mentoring program that I offer. People ask, and I was making up responses, send a little email and so on. So I thought what I need to do is write a formal, this is what the mentoring program is, does, and so on. Here's what Dr. Napoleon Hill did for me. I'm now doing it for others. And I thought about it for 2 or 3 days, but I didn't write it into the daily success system that Dr. Hill taught me. So I finally wrote, it's right here, mentoring letter. And knowing it was going to take a day or two to write, I wrote mentoring letter dash move up, which means start it, but move it up to the next day. So you realize it's probably still needs work. Once I put it on the calendar on the daily success system, I had to do it. And once I start writing something, I'm compelled, exactly what you were just talking about. I'm motivated to finish writing it. But the first word is the hard. I just published my 25th book, and counting ghost written books and so on for other people. The first word is always the hardest to write. Once I get the word written or the sentence written, I'm like a beaver, building a dam. I'm right at it. Yeah, but I could put off writing. If I hadn't written mentoring letter in my calendar, I could have easily put it off another year.
Mm-hmm.
It's been 50 years since Dr. Hill, roughly, since he died. And he and I were working on mentoring dynamics when he died.
Oh, wow.
And I put it in my back burner because the whole concept was you'd come to California, sort of train the trainer. We already had several companies doing this. You'd come to California, spend 30 days or whatever. I hadn't made up my mind about that yet with Dr. Hill. And then you go out and teach others what he had taught you and me and so on. And so I got caught up in, well, if Dr. Hill isn't here to do it, it can't be done. I mean, it could be, but we wouldn't have the seal of approval of Dr. Hill. So I literally put it on the back burner for 50 years.
Wow.
And then finally I thought, oh, it's such a good name, Mentoring Dynamics. He's not coming back. I know what he taught me, and so on. So there's an example of his system brought his program back to life. His system made me decide to do it and to write the letter. And now when anybody mentions mentoring, now how can I get you to mentor me? Within a day or two, you're going to get thank you for your interest. Attached, please find. And there will be the letter I'm about to finish. And we'll have a whole new business. Not new, I've been coaching and so on for years, but an official, exactly what Dr. Hill did for me system.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Wow. And that you're still doing it. That's even more like, man, it's awesome to see you still doing projects and stuff and giving out all this value. It's
Well,
amazing.
George Burns, the old comedian, when he got into his 90s, was asked if he was ever going to retire. And he said, to what?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm like that. When Gigi and I, Gigi, you'll hear from me frequently, is my lovely wife. And when Gigi and I first officially got married, I've known her for 50 years since I moved to this area. She and her mother were the first two people I met at church with my first wife, who's now passed away. So we've known each other forever. But when we got married and now we're putting our lives together, the lottery got up, the Powerball, the something got up to hundreds of millions of dollars, and she bought a couple of tickets. And she said, what would we do if we won it? I said, well, I would call P. Michael Hunt, who's been my financial advisor for over 50 years, tell him about his new challenge. And then I'd go to the office and write the next newsletter. And she said, you wouldn't retire? I said, to what? I do what I love.
That's awesome.
That's how I feel about the lottery too, by the way.
Yeah.
I'd be like so bored.
I retired.
I would be debt free, but I would be bored.
Absolutely. I retired when I was 30. It was the worst thing I ever did. Cost me millions of dollars and sent me in the wrong direction for a few years. So I will not, I'm coming out of my office in a body bag.
Now more than ever, businesses need more efficient sales. That's why thousands of dealerships trust 4Eyes to help with things like automated inventory email updates and ensuring all of your leads get into the CRM. To try 4Eyes for free, visit 4eyes.io/dealertalk. That's 4eyes.io/dealertalk.
Well, when you love what you do, man, like why would you stop doing it?
Absolutely.
Like if you have a job, then retire. If you have a career, then you're probably going to do that and until the end.
I have a friend who works at the post office, and believe it or not, makes about $200,000 a year because he's been there, I think 25 years. He's nearing the point where he can retire. And he said, you say you're never going to retire. What should I do? I said, retire.
Yeah.
You don't wake up every morning dying to get to the post office.
Yeah.
I know you don't.
Yeah.
So retire. You might want to retire to something. Volunteer work, another career, selling, I'll hook you up, and so on. But post office, I understand retiring. What we all do, I can't, it would be horrible to retire.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That's such a good way, good perspective. Ben, I was thinking about this session. I was thinking about, what question can I ask somebody of your caliber that has all this wisdom to share. And the first thing that came to mind that I kind of developed and wanted to get your take on is the concept of salesmanship. Do you think that's still, do you think that we have a lot of salespeople left, or that's becoming less and less kind of an art form also, or almost, excuse me?
Many of them are hiding behind computers, but selling, there's 20 million people who identify as salespeople in the United States at any given time. So I think we're probably safe. What we do will change, not what we say or whatever. I'm always asked, how have you been selling a long time? How has selling changed? I said, it hadn't changed at all. The sheepdogs are faster. I was making a lot of money inviting people to opportunity meetings, but I'd drive to I'd have to invite them face to face. B, I'd have to drive to their house or to the best prospects, because if you didn't, they'd answer the door in the bathrobe. Oh, I forgot. Not a problem. Go put your clothes on.
Yeah.
And drive them to the hotel. So I don't have to do that anymore. I've given 5,000 paid appearances and probably another 5,000 free in prisons and so on, to about 2.5 million people. But that took from 1965 to today. If I put my mind to it and get a few ducks lined up, I can talk to 2.5 million people in the next week or so. So that's faster. The percentage of closes or successful presentation drops drastically if I sit across from you face to face, or have an in-depth phone conversation, whatever. My closing rate is 86%.
Well,
Sending out email blasts, it's probably 3 or 4 or 5%.
Right.
Does that depress you? Not of 2.5 million people. No, not at
Yeah.
all. So that's changed, but basically selling hasn't changed since the India silk traders and spice merchants, and the United States since the Yankee peddler rode his route on a horse.
But do you think and maybe this is a better question, do you think that technology has hindered or enhanced? And when I talk technology, I'm talking social media. Like for example, this podcast, this is something that we would not been able to do 10 years ago. Like we would have had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get on some sort of radio show and all these other things, and then not even talk about promoting it. Right. So,
Right.
and now we can just download these applications and we can turn on and go and see our audience build from there. So do you think that we're better off now with all this technology, or maybe back in 20, 30 years ago where there was more rapport building, there was more, and I'm not talking about tactics and techniques, but there was just more of a what's the word? Like you were a student of the art, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Well, can I chime in right there? I think when Ben said they're hidden behind their computers, and discipline, going back to discipline too, both of those two factors. I'm in a room, I work business development, so I'm in a room with people. We're all on computers all day long, and it is super easy to just make another phone call without taking the time to really, really learn your craft. And that's just, I think that technology affords a certain amount of lack of discipline that perhaps we haven't seen before. And so that's where the salesmanship dies. That's where the art dies.
Well, the salespersonship, by the way.
Yeah. This goes right into the theme that we had right before you got on. So that's perfect.
On my business card, I don't know if you can see it. It says, Ben gave the third number one thing, salesman. And somebody got my card the other day and said, shouldn't that be salesperson? I said, it should be if we're talking about the world.
Right.
I'm Ben Gay. I am one salesman. And that's not going to change. Yeah, to answer the basic question, I think the quality of selling percentage-wise has dropped. There are still master closer sales infiltrators among us. And I know most of them directly or indirectly. So that has dropped a bit because of the ability to be a screw up and still make some money. You can send out a bad email to 8 million people and somebody will buy something.
Sure.
Jim Rohn said, I think it was Jim Rohn, said something to the effect, if you go out and knock on enough doors and say you don't want to buy anything, do you? If you knock on enough doors, enough people will say yes to at least make you a living, maybe not get you rich. So the numbers have affected us, and it also has cut out the qualification thing. I don't mean I was highly qualified to get into Holiday Magic Cosmetics, the company Zig and I joined that fateful day. Their joke was we all carried a little pocket mirror about the size of a deck of cards. You would probably have one in your purse. We carried them in our side pocket, and so I don't know if I could do that. And I said, well, let me see if you're qualified. And we pull the mirror out, put it under their nose. If we got vapor, I said, you're in.
You're in.
Yeah, because there were highly qualified people like Zig, and there were unqualified people like me. I'm a high school graduate, barely. My father said it must have been based on height. You got to 5'10", they threw you out. And that took me 3 attempts. I got thrown out of public school, or they told my parents probably I could learn better somewhere else, anywhere else. They didn't care, just go. So he had money, so I didn't have to go to reform school. I went to St. Andrew's Prep School outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee. Managed to get myself thrown out of there after about a year. Went back to public school and talk about good luck. Met Ms. Griffin, my English teacher, and Mr. Evans, my history teacher. Those two events changed my life. She said to me when I came skidding into the room late, and I was known as the class clown, voted wittiest. I came skidding in the classroom late. She'd never seen me in my life. I'd been gone for a year and a half, and she was a senior teacher. When I was there, I was a freshman or sophomore. She looks up and says, "Mr. Gay, I presume." And I thought, oh, this is not good. I'd hoped to go through the whole year without her knowing who I was. And she said, "Come here." And she turned a chair around, one of those built-in desk things, pulled it up beside her desk, facing the class, put it there, and she said, "You're going to sit here this year, and you're going to win the state writing championship, and you're going to speak at graduation." And I thought, she's nuts. She doesn't know my history. I probably could write a postcard to a grandmother, but that was about it for my writing skills. And I thought you had to be a salutatorian or valedictorian to speak at graduation. Well, I didn't know that she also controlled who gave the prayer, who wrote, memorized, and presented the prayer. So I won the state writing championship thanks to her. And at graduation at the Atlanta Municipal Auditorium, I walked down front and did the everybody stand motion, and 3,000 people stood up. And I remember thinking, I like this. So she made me a writer, and I didn't know it yet, but she also made me a professional speaker. Oh, and then I started speaking and heard the feedback through the microphone in that great big auditorium. I thought, I'd like this sound. This is how I should sound all the time. So selling was sort of an accident. I was born into a family of salespeople. Everybody I knew owned their own business. I was raised 2 blocks out the front gate of East Lake Country Club, Bobby Jones' home course. So I grew up being allowed to sit in the men's grill with my father so long as I didn't talk, and if spoken to, answer with a yes or a no, but just listen. And I was listening to the chairman of the board of Coca-Cola, whoever it was at the time. It sort of came with the job. You got to join Eastlake. The founders of Home Depot, the heads of at least the regional head of the top 500 companies in America at any given time. So my comfort zone was set high. I lucked out. I have a young man that came to my class, public speaking class. He was a high school dropout drug dealer in this class I was teaching at Lompoc, the federal penitentiary. And he came up to me and said, "Can I go to the class?" And I said, "Sure. What's your story?" He was 19-year-old dropout high school, assuming he ever dropped in. I don't know that. He'd been in a gun battle with his stepfather, and was serving a 5-year term. And his goal was to get out of prison, stick up somebody for $200 or $300, finance his way back into the drug business. A friend of mine told me that you got to talk to this kid. That's his goal. I talked to him the other day. We have since adopted him. He's one of our 4 boys. But there he is. Don't let your past hold you back. Lamont Bowens. And Lamont is a successful attorney, heads up the Washington, D.C. office of a big law firm. And we guarantee, I helped get him his GED, coached him personally, guaranteed his college loan, guaranteed his law school tuition. Fortunately, we've never had to pay a dime on either one. He said, "You never will, but they won't give it to me without somebody who has a chance of paying it back." So we did it. And about a year ago, I think now, he called me and said, "Dad, I need another favor." And I said, "Oh, great. How much is this one going to cost me?" Nothing's cost me anything up to now except time. But I said, "How much is this going to cost me?" He said, "Oh, nothing. This is just a letter of recommendation. I'm up for a federal judgeship in a new juvenile court the federal government is putting together." And I thought, creepy little Lamont, the drug dealer, is about to be Judge Bowens. And I would love to be in the courtroom when some little punk comes up in front of him and begins to tell Judge Bowens his tale of woe.
Right. Yeah.
I can just picture it, son, let me tell you my tale of woe
Yeah.
and how I got here. So
So
that's action of zip code. My point is, I'm not this wonderful guy who's had nothing but success. I've had my failures just like everybody else. With my 86% closing rate and the 100,000 presentations I've given face to face, I suspect, that's an estimate. That means 14,000 people have listened to the wonderful Ben Gay presentation, said, no, thank you.
that's perspective right there, man.
Yeah.
So that brings a question, and Charity and I've talked about it on the show, and I've had conversations with people in the industry, in the automotive industry, and that conversation revolves around training, right? We don't do, in my opinion, right? I don't know in other verticals, but this is the vertical that I'm in, and I don't see a lot of training, but I do see these really high expectations. Like we have these really high expectations from salespeople that they should be amazing, master closers, master salespeople, and then we don't. There's no ongoing training. There's no digital training. There is no one-on-ones. There's none of that stuff. And so,
Well, and then we just rely on the fact that, okay, well, if you're disciplined enough, you'll learn it yourself. And then we don't give them the tools for that success. We're like, Google is a thing.
But so in your opinion, and having all the success that you've had, do you think that is something that's necessary in order to get to those levels, or is it just something that if you have it within you, you have it within you? It's kind of like asking if salesperson are born or made. But in my opinion, people are made. But how are you going to make a salesperson if you don't give them any tools or resources to succeed? And then, but you have these really high expectations. It's like expecting the Lakers, right, to go out and win the championship, and they practice 0 hours.
Well, it's the same concept as calling 100 people and just glazing over the top of all of it and hoping that you're going to get one or two. You knock on enough doors. That's the way that we look at training too.
The magazine telephone people used to, in fact, I had one do it to me the other day. I caught a call, and he was with some magazine, I forget what it was, and I thought, oh my God, you're back to the old days. The old days were 1 out of 10 will buy your magazine, so all you have to do is find the 10th one. And to make sure you get more than one a day, what you have to do is dial quickly. So the minute you hear any resistance, you hang up the phone and dial the next number. Yeah. Don't debate. Any resistance. If it's not a lay down, hang up. And they sold a lot of magazines that way, but they went through a lot of salespeople, and they aggravated a lot of customers, and probably drove some wonderful people out of the sales business. If that's your first and only exposure to selling, how long would you want to do that? About half an hour in my case, I'd have been gone. So the training is crucial. There are people who take to it faster than others. I was a lifeguard swimming coach in high school, and there are kids that you say they've never been to the pool before. It's their first day, and they're dancing on the side of the pool. Okay, young men and ladies, we're going to do this in just a minute. And you're splash, and somebody has jumped in the pool, and not gracefully, but they're swimming across the pool. There's some kids who float better, aren't fearful, etc. And then you're down to that last kid where you have to say, I really don't want to scare you, but you're going in the water now. This is not a standing on the side of the pool class. Or they'd be hanging on the edge. Now you have to let go. There came a day in every class I ever taught where I walked down the edge of the pool, stepping on the remaining fingers. You're going. This is not a suggestion. You're going, in my class, you're going to learn how to swim. But the analogy there is some kids take to it. Zig came out of his mother's womb laughing and giggling and telling jokes. I'm convinced he did. I've had people who literally got a wet spot in the front of their pants when they went to the front of the room for the first time. That's the difference between Zig and others. But the person that I'm talking about, and I won't say his name, who literally wet on himself in the training room on West Peachtree Street one morning, went on to be a great speaker. He just had to get through the fear. Zig didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Why
So
is
there's
that?
that. I don't know.
That's so nerve-wracking. It is in the beginning, right? Like I've
Well,
been through, I did Dale Carnegie courses and stuff, and I feel like
right.
I've gotten a lot better. But I remember being in college and doing my first like presentation, and I remember feeling like I was going to have a heart attack when I was up there. Like
Sure.
it was
Oh,
so
yeah.
nerve-wracking.
Wade Cannon, one of my
Oh,
dear friends, he's gone now, human behavioral scientist, showed me a study he did, I think in graduate school, on fear of public speaking. Fear of public speaking was the number one
One.
psychological fear, ahead of number two, which was death by
Yeah.
fire.
Oh my God.
And
Mm-hmm.
I thought, no wonder it pays so well.
Yeah. But
They'll
that's
pay
a
me
good
to
point
do.
too. Yeah, if you can master it and you can do it well, then that's definitely an advantage for sure.
Absolutely. And it's fear of rejection, fear of humiliation, fear of, fear.
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's the reason most people don't want to do it. And I've had people say, I could change your life by getting you up in front of a room. And, well, I'd just as soon not have my life changed. Thank you very much. I'm not going to the front of the
You
room.
know,
Lamont Bowens, that was his thing. He said, we were standing outside the Lompoc Penitentiary dining room, and most people came in the end. There was a middle door that we were going to go in, which brought you in at the front of the audience. And so he said, can I come in? And so on. I said, yeah, I was told you were getting up your nerve for the last several weeks to come in. So I'm glad you're here. I put my arm around his shoulder, and as I put one hand on the door to open it, he said, and I'm not going to have to go up front, right? I said, right. Absolutely not. Not till you're ready. He said, all right. And as I opened the door, he said, promise? I said, promise. We step in. There's now a couple 300 inmates looking at us because we're at the front of the room. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, we have a new surprise guest speaker tonight. And I felt the muscles. He's a well-built young man. I felt the muscles in his shoulder tense. I said, God, I hope he doesn't swing on me. But here he is, Lamont Bowens. And Lamont, say hello to him and so on. And he only did about 5 minutes because he didn't have any inventory. What are you going to talk about? Hi, I'm a high school dropout drug dealer.
mm-hmm.
He didn't have much inventory, but he had this little thing about, I want to get out of here and do something with my life. And I remember he ended with, let's get busy. In the 5 minutes he talked, he was as good as Martin Luther King Jr. or my favorite speaker, Daddy King. I used to go down to Ebenezer Baptist Church on the bus to watch Daddy King teach. His son didn't hold a candle to him.
Wow.
And he wasn't as eloquent and educated and so on, but he'd have you on your feet screaming and yelling and you didn't know why. He just got you excited. People being slain in the spirit all around me, collapsing to the floor and so on. Lamont was that good for about 4 or 5 minutes. So when I saw him after the class, I said, young man, you've got a bright future. I know it doesn't look like it right now, but you have a bright future in front of you, and you and I are going to get you there if I have to drag you kicking and screaming.
That's
and
awesome.
Sure enough, he did. So you got to get him over the hump. Let's go back to training for just a second.
Oh, yeah.
First 6 months I was in Holiday Magic, I didn't make a dime. Not only did I not make a dime, not a dime changed hands. My sister and mother didn't buy a tube of lipstick, I guess, because I didn't ask them. I don't know, but not a dime had changed hands. One night I walk into the Georgian Terrace Hotel on Peachtree Street in Atlanta, and I'm met by my sponsor, Bill Dempsey. And he says, Mr. Gay, I need to speak to you for a minute. And I said, oh, okay. So I went over and he said, I don't want you coming to the meetings anymore. Well, the way you made money in Holiday Magic was you brought people to the meetings and helped them build their organization. So I said, what? because by that time, Rucker and I had invested $5,000. That's about $50,000 in today's money. And
Whoa.
we weren't making any money and didn't have any money to start with. I made Rucker sell his 57 Chevrolet. He's still mad about that all these years later, and et cetera, to finance our way in. I said, what's the problem? He said, well, you won't learn the scripts that I gave you on the first day. So you don't bring anybody to the meeting because you don't know how to bring them to the meeting. When you get to the meeting, you're of no use to me because you can't go to the front of the room and give the meeting, which is on a script that you also didn't learn. And then when the film says, turn to the person who brought you here and ask how you can get started, and the lights come up and people turn to you, you don't know what you're supposed to say. So not only did you not bring anybody, you blow out the prospects of people who did bring somebody. So frankly, you're getting a little depressing. I'd never heard Bengay and depressing in the same sentence in my life. I said, oh, okay, since not coming is not really an option, what do I need to do? He said, I'm going to give you additional copies of the scripts I gave you 6 months ago. When you can stand in front of my desk and recite the recruiting script, the opportunity meeting script, that was 47 minutes word for word, and then do the closes. That was 6 different closes. If the first one worked, fine. If not, you had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When you can do all the closes, word for word without notes, you can come back. About 10 days later, I stood in front of his desk and did it. And I said, now what do I do? He said, oh, here's an idea. Why don't you take the recruiting script, you can say, and go talk to some people you don't know. You've probably already worn out your friends. Go speak to somebody you don't know and invite them to the meeting. 2 or 3 nights later, I walked into the Georgian Hotel with 5 buying units. I think it was 2 or 3 couples and so on, but 5 buying units because I used the script to get them there. Somebody else gave the meeting. They weren't stupid enough to trust me with that yet. And then they said, turn to the person who brought you here. Lights came up. I got out the legal pad, started drawing circles. All 5 or 6, all of them bought, every one of them, for $5,000. I made more money that night than I was making a year in the food brokerage business.
That's crazy.
So,
but see,
that's training though. See,
yeah.
Bill didn't say, here's a suggestion. He did to start with. That didn't work for 6 months.
Right.
He said, here's a job requirement.
Yeah. But
things they help you overcome the fear that's holding you back.
Yep.
When you say, listen, this isn't a suggestion anymore. This is an expectation. Say the damn words.
Right.
Like I wasn't asking, I was telling. And then that command is what pushes people over into, and then they start seeing their own power and they start seeing their own strength. I often say, the average phone call is 3 minutes long. You're afraid of 3 minutes. If you pick up the phone and you call that person and you push back against whatever they say at the end, let's say the phone call runs 20 minutes. That's 20 minutes of fear but the amount of time that it's taking you to talk yourself into that's 40 minutes right there. So which one's easier?
Yeah. And you said earlier too, Ben, like the inventory part, like as a speaker, if you don't have the inventory, I think that's what makes you afraid, is because you don't have anything to say. But as a salesperson, not having that armament, so to speak, not having those tools, it's what makes you afraid. But once you have the script to overcome the objection, once you have the script to move a person from this state to the next state, then you're not afraid anymore. You're eager to use those things and utilize those tools. And the killer thing is, the more you use them, the better you become at them, and the better your whole performance is going to become.
One of my little giveaways when I'm getting ready to go on stage is my foot starts pawing. I want to go. You're
ready.
I love the introduction. I wrote it, but damn, it's long. Get to the part where you say, here's Ben Gay. I want to get on. I want to get on. I want to get on. And then you'll have things that will inoculate you along the way. I was had gotten used to speaking to 300, 400, 500 people 4 or 5 times a week in Atlanta. And I got invited to come to New York for, they said, a bigger meeting. And so I went up, and it turned out the bigger meeting was in the Park Sheraton Hotel ballroom, 5,000 people. Well, that was just sort of a number. Stalin said 1 death is a tragedy, 10,000 is a statistic. A large crowd, what's large? I used to think 400 or 500 was large. So on the way there, in the hotel, the gentleman who was a vice president of beauty and fashion, you two are both too young to know who he is, but Ern Westmore used to be on television every few minutes doing makeovers, mainly on the Art Linkletter show. And he was a member of the famous Westmore family. At one time, the father and the 5 sons were each head of makeup in a major studio in Hollywood simultaneously. They were old Hollywood ascots, So he said to me, introduced himself and said, I understand you and I are going to be speaking tonight. I'd like to get to know you a little bit. And I said, fine. And we went to the Carnegie Deli. He showed me how to order there, which was rapid. You don't say, well, let's see. I think maybe I'll have, because they'll throw you out the door. It's fast and furious, or was. The Carnegie just closed. But he took me there. And then he grilled me a little bit. And while we were eating, he was taking these little pills. It turned out they were nitroglycerin pills. He had a heart condition. So I come down. He said, would you mind if I introduce you tonight? I'm going on before you. And while I'm there, why don't I just transition and introduce you? I said, absolutely. He said, okay, tell me your full name. I said, Benjamin Franklin Gay III. He said, got it. I said, you need to know anything else? He said, no, that's it. He was an old pro, And during the lunch, I had said, once I figured out the heart problem, I said, Ern, if you had to go, God forbid, someday, where would you want to go? He said, on stage in front of a large group of ladies talking about beauty and fashion. And I said, great. So we go back to our rooms. I call my mother. I'm here in New York with Ern Westmore. She said, no, you're not. And I said, no, I am. Just had lunch with him. No, you didn't. And he's going to introduce me tonight to this group. No, he's not. I mean, she just shut down. This godlike creature she'd watched on television for years is now Ben's friend. I don't think so. So I come down, walk in the room, and then I realized what 5,000 people look like. And I began to quiver a little bit. In fact, I seriously considered, there was a side door right behind me, turning around and just not being there when he introduced me. But just as I was about to turn on my heels, they put a pin light on me because he'd started talking about me. Now there's no running. 5,000 people are looking at this guy that Ern's talking about. And right near the end of this introduction, in that case, I wish it had gone on forever because I didn't want to be called up. He said, and now, ladies and gentlemen, my new friend, and I believe a man who will one day be president of this company, Benjamin Franklin Gay III, pointed at me and dropped dead on stage. Not fainted. There's a difference between fainting and dropping dead. I've seen it with my own eyes. It looked like he'd been shot with an elephant gun. Down he went, spotlights on me. The introductory music is blaring. There's nowhere to go. So I went up the 2 or 3 steps, got on the stage. Is there a doctor in the house? There was. He came up, worked. Somebody called the ambulance and so on. After they worked on him for a few minutes, they looked up and said, sir, he's dead. And I said,
whoa.
Okay. And they put him in the Stokes litter and wheeled him off. And right when they got to the edge of the stage, I said, gentlemen, stop just a second. Ladies and gentlemen, I had lunch with Ern Westmore today. God help me. He was speaking through me because I didn't know what to say. But I said, I had lunch with him today, and I asked him if he had to go because he was eating heart pills. How would he like to go? And he said, on stage in front of a large group of women, that were men and women here, of women talking about beauty and fashion. Ern Westmore has had his last wish. Let's give him one last standing ovation.
Oh.
They almost tore the place down. I mean, I heard later they could hear it on the lobby and up on the mezzanine outside. So out he went, and now I'm thinking, 5,000 people, spotlights on me. What do I do? The script. That's what I was supposed to do anyway. So I said, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ben Gay. I'm a general distributor with Holiday Magic. It's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's special meeting, and went right into the 47-minute presentation. 5,000 people in the room, about half of them be prospects, 2,500. In a group situation like that, we would close 35 to 40% of the prospects. That night, we closed 90%.
Wow.
Scripting, Ern's experience, my scripting saved me. And I've told people since who are going into public speaking, what do I do to ensure, I jump over all the hoops and everything. I said, get a very famous person who's willing to give his life and die on stage to introduce you. It is miraculous, the results that will bring.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I haven't been able to get anybody but Ern to do it. But that, we're talking about fear in a sales presentation, one-on-one, or in front of a group, or conducting a sales meeting, which the people we were talking about earlier should be doing. That inoculates you. I've been in a lot of interesting situations since then, and friends of mine who've tried to trip me up, faces at the back of the room, notes, things inserted in my notes, all sorts of tricks. I don't bat an eye. Ern's death in front of 5,000 people inoculated me. I'm immunized.
Yeah.
So I encourage people to look for opportunities like that.
Man, thank you so much, Ben, for doing this. We really appreciate. Thanks for making some time to talk to us and share some of your wisdom. I want to give you some time to let people know how they can get in touch with you. And then, of course, we'll put as much as we can in the show notes for people to reach out. But let folks know, how can they get in touch with you? How can they learn more about your systems, and how can they connect?
Well, what we have is my base is the Closers series. This will be the Closers part 50 someday. I've just signed an agreement that will make that possible. But currently there's the Closers 1, 2, 3. We just came out with part 5, etc. This is the most powerful, best-selling, most popular book on selling closing ever written. We sold 10.5 million copies of it when we quit counting 25 years ago. It's the foundation of modern selling. If you don't have the Closers or something as powerful, and there isn't anything, you're screwed. So you got to get it. We'll wait for you to motivate yourself, or you can learn it from somebody else, or you fall under the influence of a good sales trainer and somebody who's experienced and has really done it, not just talked about it. And or you got to do it, or you got to do it yourself. Now, here's how you do that particular recommendation. You go to, not my website, which shows on this thing I'm about to hold. This is high tech, by the way. That's my website, and you're welcome to go there. But where I want you to go is to stores.ebay.com/Ronzoni Books, RONZONE Books, BOOKS. Go there. They offer the entire Closer series with special pricing and free shipping. I don't do that at my website. We charge full price and you pay for shipping. Well, how can Ronzoni Books do that? Gigi's maiden name is Ronzoni. And the way she gets her books is she sneaks into my warehouse and steals them, sells them on that website, and then feeds them back into our shipping thing. So she doesn't pay, except for what we as a couple, she doesn't pay for the books, and she doesn't pay for the shipping. She is able to offer special pricing and free shipping. So if you don't mind dealing with an embezzler, go to and I personally would do it myself. Go to Go to Ronzoni Books and get it there. Everything comes with an unconditional, no questions asked, lifetime money back guarantee. And with all the millions and millions of books we've sold over the years, guess how many returns we've had? 2.
Wow.
And when they came in,
Wow.
our people didn't know what to do. They'd never had a return. What do we do with this? I said, I don't know.
Right on.
Mail them
Okay.
some money.
So we're going to put this information in the show notes too. So if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, go to the video description. And if you're listening to this wherever you get your podcast fix, then go to the show notes. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. There is one question that I ask everybody that comes on the show, excuse me. And that question is, where do you see the automotive industry headed in the next 5 years and why? But because you're a special guest, I'm going to change it a little bit. Where do you see the salesmanship going in the next 5 years and why?
It'll continue to evolve like it has now, although, as I said earlier, selling is selling. If you go out 5 or 10 years and like you're sitting here today and someone drops you into a dealership, 5-year time machine, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, it'll look significantly different. The way things are done and the emphasis on there won't be as much emphasis on the showroom and the cars and all, because you probably already know what you got, assuming you went to the showroom instead of ordering from the dealership's website. There's all the national ones, but any smart dealer is going to have a website of his or her own where you can order. I've ordered and paid for, bought or leased over 600 luxury cars to give away. I've kept a few of them over the years, but to give away over 600. I have never taken a test drive. My first big purchase after I became head of the company and ran a successful contest was to pick up the phone and call Marin Bay Lincoln Mercury and order 48 Lincoln Continentals over the phone. I didn't go look at them, didn't drive them. I grew up around nice things. I knew they were nice cars and so on. So you're going to see people edging towards that. But this big change in the next 5, 10, 15 years will happen gradually. There are people who have not yet been born who would be on the tail end of that 15-year cycle. The people who are here now, the change will be gradual. Most of the people in car dealerships today won't be in the car business 5 or 10 years from now. Wouldn't have before, won't now. So it's like climate change. I've lived in the South, I've lived in the North, I've lived in Canada, I've traveled all over the world. It's the same, and I'm not talking politics. The water levels at the beaches I go to in Mendocino have been the same since I was 6 years old. What change there is so gradual, it's not noticeable. So there will be change in the automobile business, just like there's change in every business. The internet and computers have changed our world, sometimes for the best, sometimes for the worst, but they're changing and there's nothing you can do to stop. So take a deep breath and just adjust with it. In California, they just announced yesterday that, I forget what it is, 100% of all vehicles have to be electric or non-polluting, whatever that means, in the next 30 or 40 years. That won't happen. Lawsuits will slow it down and this and that, and then technology will catch up. Might happen faster, might happen slower, but it's going to be gradual. It doesn't make any difference. I had a friend of mine in the automobile business, owns a dealership, call me this morning. Ben, what am I going to do? What you've always done, and talk to the people around you, stay in touch with the home office, and roll with the flow. And maybe I went into a McDonald's the other day and they didn't want to take my order at the counter. I was supposed to go to a kiosk and punch it in. I said, no, I'm not paying you full price for the hamburger and doing the work. Next, you want me to come back behind the counter and cook it. You're going to take my order. Thank you. I want to, by the way, those 600 cars were bought from a total of 3 different sales people. The first one almost didn't make any difference because I only bought 4 or 5 before I left Atlanta. The other most of the 600 came from 2 salespeople. Once you get in with a customer and you become his or her vice president in charge of cars, the game is over.
Yeah.
But if you treat them like a used car salesman, I'm talking about the standard image, and lie, cheat, and steal, or don't know how to overcome the image that they think you are a liar, cheater, and stealer. If you don't develop the skill to do that, and that's in the Closers Part 2, last chapter, sales infiltration, you're screwed.
There it is, folks. Well, again, Ben, thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. Thank all of you for tuning in. That's all the time we have for today. And as usual, we'll talk later.
We only host a well-respected. The vendor LexisNexis. We don't sell digital marketing. What you do? We inspect it with our DT vendor management.
Now more than ever, businesses need more efficient sales. That's why thousands of dealerships trust 4Eyes to help with things like automated inventory email updates and ensuring all of your leads get into the CRM. To try 4Eyes for free, visit 4eyes.io/dealertalk. That's 4eyes.io/dealertalk.